Hello and welcome back to the second video in my 65-gallon Reef aquarium build. This project started 7 months ago with the design and construction of this stand. It's made out of MDF and 2x4s, and it houses my 30-gallon sump. It's a 3-foot tank, and on top sits another 3-foot tank, and this is a 65-gallon display tank. The second stage in the process was to drill the back of this display tank for my 3 bulkheads. Those are 1-inch PVC bulkheads. 2 of them are for the drain lines. The one in the middle there is for the return pump. And lastly, I installed the baffles and the bubble trap here in my sump, and then put together all the plumbing. For a more detailed overview of the plumbing design, please see my previous video. That's the part 1 video in this series. In that I walk through how the plumbing was put together and why. Now I wanted to post a second video here to discuss where I'm at in the overall project, and also talk about some of the things that I've learned along the way. The intention is that if you have your own reef aquarium project underway at home, or you're thinking about starting one, hopefully some of the information I can share with you will be of use. Now I wanted to start by addressing a couple of the comments that I had from my last video. Those comments are around this skimmer drain bar. So that bar is a 24-inch piece of 1-inch PVC. It connects the 2 bulkheads on the far right and the far left. Now there's 2 90-degree elbows on each side. So it comes off the back wall, goes up, and then across the top. So one of the concerns that a commenter raised was that he felt this was a great risk for a flood. And that's because on the top, the way that it drains is I've cut in a slot. There's actually 2 slots. They're both 1/10 of an inch wide, and each one runs 10 inches. Now it's not continuous. I left a little bit in the middle. It's really hard to see with the water flow, but I did leave a little bit in the middle uncut. You can make it out there, so that there's some rigidity left in that skimmer bar. Now the concern was that this is going to fill up with algae and debris and possibly snails and end up causing a flood by overflowing. So that's a valid concern, and in order to understand how concerned I should be, I ran a little test. So I drained the tank below that skimmer bar, I dried it off, and then I put a piece of tape across that top slot. I covered all 20 inches of slot that I've cut in there. And then I peeled it back an inch at a time until I found the point where my return pump capacity could drain through the PVC slot. Now, to my surprise, I only needed 5.5 inches of my drain slot exposed in order to drain the full capacity of my return pump. So that was less than expected. And what it means is that, 5.5 inches times 0.1 of an inch for the thickness of that slot is just 0.55 square inches of drain that I require to drain my return pump capacity. Now, because that was less than expected, I decided to run a second test where I measured the flow rate that I'm getting from my return pump, the actual flow rate out of my black flex socket tubing there into the display tank. So I'm running an Eco 633 pump down here, which is rated at 633 gallons per hour. To my surprise, when I drained a known volume of water out of my display tank and fired that pump back up, and then used a stopwatch to measure how long it took to fill itself back up, I found that I was only getting a flow rate of 280 gallons per hour. Now, that was a little bit disappointing, but it wasn't a big surprise after I'd measured the drain. So knowing that 0.55 square inches of drain was enough to drain all my return pump flow, I wasn't surprised I was only getting 280 gallons per hour. That's based on the estimation that a 1-inch piece of vertical pipe can drain 500 gallons an hour. So all that to say, you might be surprised with how much loss you're actually getting off your return pumps. In my case, I'm going up 45 inches. I'm just going around the 1 90-degree elbow to come into the back of this tank, and I'm losing over 50% of the flow from that pump. Now, the second comment about the skimmer bar was that an option here would be to take out 2 of the 90-degree elbows. So take out this one and just simply use 1 90-degree elbow connected to that skimmer bar and go right into the back of the tank with it. That would mean that your skimmer bar is coming straight out across from your bulkhead and connecting to the other bulkhead. That would mean that you're going to have to raise this bulkhead up considerably to where you want your water level to be. Now, I thought about doing that in this design, but I didn't for 2 reasons. The first was that when you drill your tank that close to the edge of the glass, you have a really big risk that you're going to crack your glass. You're going to crack it out to the edge. General rule that I'd read was you don't want to be within 3 inches. The edge of your hole, you do not want to be within 3 inches of the edge of your piece of glass. Now, that obviously also depends on how thick the glass is. So that said, I wasn't keen on drilling my holes that close to the top. The second concern is if you do manage to drill the holes without cracking, you've now completely fixed your water level. And in my case, I can put a piece of PVC in between these two 90-degree elbows and raise up my water level if I choose to in the future. So for those 2 reasons, I opted to go with this design. And the drawback is simply that when I have a typical viewing angle like this, you can see the 2 vertical pieces of pipe that come up. So I'm not too concerned about that. I think it's pretty subtle, and you know, I'm very happy with all in all the drain performance I'm getting and all the surface skimming that I'm getting. So one last note on the skimmer bar is, of course, like any key piece of equipment in your tank, you've got to keep an eye on it. So I intend to do weekly and monthly maintenance. I have a little brush that I'll be running across the top of the skimmer bar, just so that any debris and algae that's forming on it gets sucked into my sump, into the filter sock in my sump. So, you know, that's pretty typical of the equipment in your tank. You've got to keep an eye on it. The one nice thing that I did note from the test I ran was that as I start reducing the area where I'm skimming, and when I got down to the 5.5 inches, it started to make a lot of noise. It was sucking in a lot of air through the hole with the water, and essentially it was a little alarm that's going to be going off in the future if I do get close to hitting the capacity there where I'm going to risk a flood. It's going to start slurping, and that'll be an indication for me to check the thing out and clean it off. So now let's move on to the live rock. I've now cycled the tank for over a month. It's in really good shape. It has been for a while, actually. It has been for a week or 2. So I've just started to add the cleanup crew, and I've arranged my live rock into my aquascape here. And what I've opted for is one big mound in the middle. That was so that I can access all 4 pieces of glass for cleaning in the future. If you go right up against your back wall, you'll get your coralline algae and other growth on the back wall that's just impossible to scrape off. So, or very difficult to scrape off, I should say, to get into the nooks and crannies without actually having to move your live rock. So I've opted for putting a lot of space in this tank. If I come over to the side, you can see from the side I've got full access to the glass on the back and on the front, so I can get in there to clean it up. Now you also notice there's a lot of black holes that you'll see between the pieces of live rock. Down here, up here, in the middle, up here, over here, down here. So that was by design. That black area is actually, it's holes between the live rock that I've created. So I've spaced them on top of each other such that I've got nooks and crannies. And I was also pretty careful not to cover up any more of the sand than I had to. You can see in there I've got a lot of sand exposed under in the middle. Essentially you want as much room around the live rock as you can get for water flow, and that's going to just improve the effectivity of that live rock and its filtration. And secondly, all those nooks and crannies provide a nice place for your livestock, your fish, to hide. That's going to mean they're going to be less stressed. They've got lots of rock to hide in. And so what I'm saying is you want to resist the tendency to piece your live rock together like a puzzle to fit all the little cracks and nooks into each other so that you have a nice stable structure, which is great, but then you have very little water flow around, so you're really reducing the effectiveness of your live rock filtration. Now I've opted for a medium grain sand. From everything I read, that was the best choice. If you go finer than this, I'd heard you get the dust storms that can stir up, and you don't want to go with the crushed coral either, because that limits what you can put in your tank. A lot of animals can't handle the crushed coral, they get torn up. So I was pretty happy with the medium grain sand so far. You'll also notice that I do have some aptasia on a couple pieces of rock in here. Now these pieces of rock came from another tank of mine. I really liked the pieces of rock. I knew the aptasia was there. So the first real livestock that I'm going to be adding to this tank, aside from the cleanup crew that's already in there, is a aptasia eating filefish and a few peppermint shrimps. And I'm going to let them work away. Hopefully in a week or 2 they'll have demolished all of my aptasia, and then I'll have a nice clean tank that I can start putting my clowns and move my coral over into. So let's go down into the sump for a moment, and you'll see that the first compartment is the drain lines coming into the skimmer compartment, and that's my Skims 161 skimmer that's now up and running. I just dumped it, so there's not much skimmate showing now, but you can see based on the mess in the neck there that this thing has been pulling out some nice junk from my tank, which is pretty good considering that I don't have very much of a biological load at all. So that's really just die off from the live rock that it's pulling out. So that's good. Underneath it, I built a little stand because I had to raise it up. They don't need much water level height in these skimmers, so I just use a piece of PVC and diffuser to raise it up. Behind there, you'll see I have my filter sock and that black temperature probe. And coming into the sock are my two drain lines. You can see those two nylon tubes in the back. They're nylon, clear nylon by design so that I can see the water flow. Now in the middle, I've got my third drain line that's teed off. It's teed off with that ball valve so that I can have some unskimmed water coming into my refugium. So in this refugium you can see a few pieces of live rock in there as well as my macroalgae, which I've just started to grow. Above I have a really inexpensive clamp-on light. This you can get at most hardware stores. It's running a 6500K bulb right now, compact fluorescent. I think it's only drawing about 13 watts. And for the installation, instead of the clamp it comes with, you can see here I've got a wing nut that I can screw in to a stud that I mounted up into this 2x4. So this way I can take this on and off, get it out of my way for cleaning in the refugium or anytime I want to get in there. Now in the third compartment I have that Eco 633 pump. In the corner I've got my heater, you can see it's on. And on the right hand side right here, this light blue is my pH probe. That's part of the digital aquatics setup that I've got running. There's my two PC4 modules and the SL1 module that you need for that pH probe. Now I want to point out that all my power bars are on the opposite side as my skimmer. This is the way you want to do it. This is by design. It's inevitable that that skimmer collection box is going to overflow at some point in time. And when it does, it sprays a little bit of water up, it drips back down into the sump. Even if that never happens to you by chance, then even when you're just taking it out to dump the skimmate, you spill a little bit of water here and there. It's inevitable. So really you don't want any of your power bars above or around that skimmer compartment at all. And even my light, I've mounted it to the right here. You can see it's quite a ways away. It's as far away as I could get. And then all my electronics are on the very opposite side. So that Reef Keeper system has the Reef Keeper light head unit. Over here it's showing that my current temperature is just 70 degrees. I just had my heater off for a while, so I was playing around with that. And if I scroll up, I can see that my pH is sitting at 7.95, a little bit low at this point, but not so low that I'm going to be concerned. All in all, I'm really impressed with that digital aquatics system since they released the MyReef 2.0 software. So that was a big improvement. It made setup and adjustments to the PC4 modules really easy. So they did a great job on that, and it's a fairly inexpensive way to have a lot of control over your system. Alright, so I guess that's pretty well everything for my part 2 video. In the next month or two I will be posting a part 3 after I've got my Aptasia cleaned up and after I've added some of my livestock and pulled my corals over. So please keep an eye out for that video. And in the meantime, I look forward to seeing and hearing any feedback on this system. Please post your comments on what you think could be changed to improve things so that myself and the others reading this and watching this can incorporate the same helpful hints. Other than that, I wish you the best of luck on your own reef aquarium project.